Hey, this is Future Chat. Rob here with a special out of time review of the Samsung Galaxy Tab Pro S. You'll recall back in June, I did a review for that was the Samsung Galaxy Tab A7, I believe. It was a very confusing 7-inch tablet. You'll recall if you watched that video or listened to that podcast that I didn't find that tablet particularly satisfying. I have never owned a 7-inch tablet. I find them a little weird and kind of in between. That tablet was kind of the worst of all worlds. It wasn't very powerful. I described it as being something kind of out of 2012, 2013. It was very kind of underpowered hardware. I got a little pushback on those particular points, but I think they're valid. And so got another tablet from Samsung. I'm going to give it a go. So here it is. It's a 12-inch tablet. It seems this seems like the top half of a laptop in a lot of ways, and in a lot of good ways. Other than the fact that it's a bit heavier because it's got a battery thing in it. It's heavier than a screen would be. The main difference between this and other Samsung tablets, this is a Windows tablet. It's also powered by an Intel chip, which I found interesting. It's an Intel mobile chip, but still, it's a dual-core chip. So I was kind of expecting quite a bit of power. I guess it does deliver. It's got an SSD in it. This one has 128 gig SSD. It's responsive. It's very the computer itself is very responsive. I like the experience. I tend to prefer Apple products, at least in the last 3 or 4 years. But my Windows computer is a desktop right here. It's the thing I use to kind of get serious work done when I'm sitting at my desk. So I have nothing against Windows. I'll get into a bit of the specifics of why this is a little weird for me, this particular tablet. I've played with a Surface before, like Windows Surface, but I've never actually owned one. So I can't compare the two directly, but I'm going to attempt to make that comparison. This is the first tablet that I've used that has Windows 10 on it, the first Windows tablet I've used that has 10 on it. I like the way Windows 10 works on a tablet. I've always kind of liked Windows. And I have done a lot of kind of from an iPad. I've I've remote desktoped into a Windows thing, which is kind of like using a tablet, and I found it pretty good. Most of the touch points, especially in Windows 10, have been updated to become a lot bigger, so it's pretty easy to hit things. And this tablet actually, I'll try to show you. It comes with a keyboard and trackpad as well that you can kind of snap it into, and that makes things really easy. It makes it really easy to go into tablet mode. It can actually do that automatically if you set that up, so that you don't have to worry about switching back and forth out of tablet mode to get bigger touch targets if you're going to be using your fingers a lot. I found that I prefer the tablet thing to having it snapped into the keyboard and actually using the keyboard to type, although I can see how that'd be really useful, either if you like a keyboard or if you're typing out something really long, you don't want to use a software keyboard. That's one thing where I know that Apple is just miles ahead of the competition. The Windows software keyboard is pretty good. It's fine. It's a lot better than it used to be, but it still leaves something to be desired when you compare it to an iPad software keyboard. And I don't think that's just because I've had experience with the iPad for longer. I've used the iPad for a long time, but I also found that the experience I had with the iPad made me better at this keyboard than I expected to be, but it still wasn't quite the same thing. If you start typing quickly, it gets confused between where you're touching, and it kind of tries to register 2 or 3 key presses at once, or misses one or something like that. I found it a lot harder to type quickly on this. Maybe it's just kind of a difference thing and I would get used to it, but I still feel like it's inferior, at least to a point. Now, the screen itself, it's not a super high resolution screen. It's like 2500 by 1400 or something. It's slightly higher than 1080, and it's pretty bright. Like it's a good screen. It's certainly not blurry. It's certainly not the 1068 by or 1024 by 768 or whatever the standard definition Windows laptop or Windows kind of environment is before 1080 came along, which is a good thing. Like you can't really tell, you can't really see a lot of pixels. You kind of can if you get really close, but in a normal thing, it's a very crisp screen. The one thing I will say, and this is again coming from an iPad, so I've been spoiled. The iPad is like miles ahead of everyone else in terms of tablet functionality. I have not tried any kind of screen that matches up to a touchscreen that Apple makes, but this screen is very responsive. It's hard to say because you can't really know exactly what to expect when you're comparing an Apple product versus Microsoft or a Samsung product. The tablet, the touchscreen is responsive. It really is. It's pretty fast. It responds well, but it's not the same. It's not nearly as smooth. I don't know what it is about those patented Apple multi-touch screen and all the gestures you can do, but they're just so smooth, and no phone, tablet, anything I've used from any company other than Apple has matched up to the expectations that has set for me. And that's kind of disappointing in this tablet, but nothing that I have found has actually matched up to this. So I'm not super surprised. That being said, very bright. It's a very good screen, and it's at least similar to the time I've spent with the Windows Surface. It's not worse. It's not way better. It's just kind of run-of-the-mill screen. In terms of the power and the speed, I can't say that I've put this machine through its paces necessarily, and that's mostly just because, you can only do so much on a test, but I did find that I tend to surf the web pretty hard, so getting Google Chrome going, getting a few different tabs going. Chrome is known for being pretty RAM hungry. This tablet, I'm told, has 4 gigabytes of RAM. It's not bad. It has kept up with me, which is more than I can say for a lot of other devices. Specifically, that Samsung Tab A7 that I was using did not keep up with me at all. This is mostly kept up, and yeah, I was satisfied with the speed of the SSD and of the RAM, and even the Intel mobile chip. It did what I needed to do. Now, that being said, I'm not sure this could handle something like Photoshop well. I imagine that it probably could handle it just fine for your everyday, but professional artists or kind of graphic designers probably would want to go to a full laptop, like a gaming laptop or something like that, to get really powerful specs. This is not going to be a powerhouse for you. So don't expect that at all. In terms of battery life, it says it's rated for 10.5 hours of battery. You're not going to get 10.5 hours. I'm sorry to say, but I have to say, the battery life is fine. It's, in terms of what I'm used to from a Windows laptop, low power mode tends to be off or asleep. With an SSD, this thing wakes up really quickly, and it saves a lot of battery while it's underpowered because it doesn't have to keep the hard drive spinning. It doesn't have to keep any parts moving, which is just kind of a thing in laptops now, which is kind of nice. Right now, it says I've been using it for a little bit, maybe a little less than an hour, 45 minutes. It says I have 4 hours, 20 minutes remaining and 93%. Do with that information what you will, but battery life is fine for a laptop of this thinness. Like it's actually very thin. It's not bad at all. That's one of the main things they tout in the advertising for this device, is that it's super thin. Now, Windows on a tablet is weird. They've tried to get rid of those weirdnesses that you have from Windows on a tablet with Windows 10. Specifically with Windows 8, they brought those features in. With 10, they tried to refine them, and they did a pretty good job. When this thing's in tablet mode, it works fairly well. It's nice that you can do the apps side by side. You can actually, as of Windows 10, I'm not sure how to do it on a tablet, but I know on a computer you can actually snap Windows into actually quarters of the screen, and they'll actually snap properly straight in. This thing, a tablet. I don't know if this is just because I'm spoiled from using Android devices and iOS devices, but I expect apps on a tablet. Whether it's a full Windows tablet that it has a keyboard you can snap on, I expect applications. I don't just expect to surf the web anymore. I don't just expect email apps and calendar and all that. I expect Facebook. I expect Facebook to have an app, and it does on Windows, in the Windows Store. Things like Twitter, Facebook Messenger. Slack also has a really good app that works on Windows Mobile as well as it does on Windows Desktop. But there are a lot of apps that you won't find. You won't find nearly as many. The big games are here. There's a Candy Crush game. For instance, there is becoming more and more kind of selection in the app ecosystem on Windows, but it's not really everything you'd expect. If you want to go from Android to Windows, or if you want just like productivity apps outside of Office, there's not much. The selection on here is not great. The nice thing about this being a full Windows computer is that you can go on the web and you can just install any program. Like I have iTunes on here, for instance. So if you like, you can't necessarily get an Apple Music app, but you don't necessarily need one because you've got an iTunes app. The browser, I've used Microsoft Edge, so it's fairly similar to what you get on a desktop computer or just any device running Windows 10. It's pretty fast. I prefer Chrome myself, and so I installed that on here right away. I don't know. The app ecosystem is something to get used to. It's kind of one of the sacrifices you have to make to use Windows. But then with this full experience, you do get those apps back. Now, the keyboard and the stand that comes with it. This thing is kind of interesting. It's a pretty light thing. I believe it's just a keyboard. There's no battery or anything. It's got kind of a smart connector type of thing going on. Just a series of contacts right here. Right here. And so the thing just snaps right in. It is a seemingly full laptop keyboard. It's pretty big. I was able to type fairly well on here. It actually feels a lot like a laptop keyboard. So you can just kind of very satisfyingly snap it in. At which point you're able to fold it up here. Everything kind of snaps really nicely into place. The back of the thing is held on by magnets. It's very thin. Ask me to exit tablet mode. I'll say sure. So once you get to here, this is really just a Windows laptop. Like in feel, in look, in weight. The only difference really is this little kind of gap here. You can see right on through. It does actually go to different angles as well, so you can see that I can lean the computer way back if I wish. You can do that if you're on a desk. So there's two different kind of viewing angles, if you will, both of which are fine. I found myself switching back and forth between the two. It does stay together and hold pretty well in your lap, so that's fine. That's actually excellent. Yeah, the screen here, there's a camera on the front and a camera on the back. The back camera actually is pretty neatly designed to just go right through this little hole in the stand. Kind of nice. Before I go, I get it. Again, I'm spoiled I got a new iPad this spring. This iPad has a 4K video camera, a 1080 camera that you're looking on through here. The Windows, both cameras, the front and back camera, are 5 megapixels. They can record, they called it 1080 video on the back. I'm not sure that I would call it good HD video. It's kind of substandard. And again, this is like, I'm spoiled by Apple's products, and I know that Samsung, in their actual cell phones and their flagship phones, they put a lot of effort into making those cameras really good. This camera in here did not get one of those high-end cameras, and it shows. This camera is not great. Neither the front-facing nor the rear-facing camera are great. You can do video chats if you want, but don't expect to be taking portraits or anything like that. Very grainy, not great at low light, and only 5 megapixels. So do with that information what you will. So overall, I've had this thing for about a month. It has been pretty good. It's a great kind of laptop to have, and if I only had one laptop and I had around $1,000 to spend, I would certainly consider it in theory. It's a good kind of first try at a full, Windows 10 advanced, very laptop-like tablet. Yeah. I can't necessarily recommend this for power users, But if you want to get email done, but you prefer Windows, but you like having the option of swapping out into tablet mode, this is actually kind of a really nice compromise in all those areas. But in terms of just having a tablet with a keyboard attached, I think you might be better served at least trying out an iPad. That being said, I'm biased. I do like Windows as an experience as a whole. I have no kind of hate on Windows itself, but in terms of kind of the whole package of a tablet, I don't think you can go wrong choosing an iPad. That's always going to be my choice until either Windows, Samsung, whatever, Windows OEM can change my mind on that. And it hasn't happened yet. So thanks for watching or listening to this episode of Future Chat. We're back with regular episodes in a couple weeks, the second week of January. So I'll talk to you then. Bye.